you guys have a clicker? Do you want me to use, should I use mine?
No, there's a clicker.
There's one up there? Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You bet. That's it. Put it in the phone.
It's 5 o'clock, and we'll get our meeting, our study session started. I'd like to say that all the commissioners are available with the exception of Commissioner Orr. He's trying to get back here in time for the meeting. He had to be out of town for a funeral, so trying to get back. So with that being said, get the right paper. Where am I at? Right here, okay. Okay. Item number 2, at the Commissioner's request, discuss any item of concern on the regular session agenda. Does anyone have anything they want to
Yes.
talk about?
Yes.
All right. Commissioner Saragusa?
Number 610.
Yeah, number 610, Aaron, would you talk about what we're doing there with that appropriation? And we also have Jeff Bemis here, the manager from the Stride Bank Center.
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners. As we've worked through and did an update at the last commission meeting, I let you know that we'd be bringing back an appropriation for the event center. I think you also heard during the budget process from OVG directly that they were not hitting the target this year as far as revenues coming in. Additionally, in this fund, we also have hotel tax, and it is also not hitting revenue projections for the year, as I mentioned last time. And so it's a combination of those two things, or we need to send some of the sales tax that we have collected to offset some of that shortage in hotel revenue and event revenue to make sure that we stay within our surplus deficit for that fund for the year. It's not that they've overspent on the expenditure sides, it's that the revenue has lagged in both of those areas in this fund for this year.
I just wanted to bring that up because it's underperformance. I understand we coming out of COVID and everything else and things are starting to reel back and everything. I understand that part of it. But the underperformance, if it continues, we cannot sustain at this level, and nor will I ever vote for funding again if this keeps occurring. I just want to make that clear.
Understood.
One of the things that's pretty obvious during the budget period is they have no incentive to
Exactly.
spend less money. And we don't put any pressure on them. And we should. I mean,
That's why I brought it up tonight, because we're talking about $400,000. We got fire trucks that cost $2-3 million that we need repaired and or bought new, and we're having a problem finding money for it, yet we're dumping $500,000 extra into an event center that happened before I became a commissioner. I know if I was up on the commission when that all went down, I would have voted against it, because most of my constituents were against it. And the way it's going, it seems like we're getting nailed each and every year, and it's getting harder and harder that we're getting nailed. And I don't see how we can sustain at this level.
What would be the alternative then? Shut it down? Close the doors? I mean, we're still gonna have expense on that building, and if we have meetings or we have anything there, I mean, you're not just going to go from 400,000 to zero. So I mean, what would be the alternative?
I didn't expect us zero, but this is 400,000 on top of what we already spent this year on our budget stuff.
Okay.
And now we're looking at next year, and we upped it, I think we upped it again on this year's budget, didn't we? To cover, it was a little more expenditure this year than it was this coming fiscal year. I said, what are we gonna come back in, June of next year? And they needing another 400,000 on top of what we already turned around and expended? That's where I have the issue with. It's like, how much are we gonna dump in every year? Is it gonna be 1.2 million this year? Is it gonna be 7.8 million next year? I mean, they gotta do something to start bringing those numbers down
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
and show, because if they ain't got no incentive, like Commissioner Stallings said, what's gonna make them just keep operating, because we're just gonna keep voting and giving them money?
Well, let me go ahead and say something going forward. We are at a crossroads. I think Jeff and Keller knows that. Mayor, you sat in on a conversation that we had. As we're at the point, we need to figure out the way ahead there. The contract that we have with OVG 360 comes up about a year from now. So we've had some significant conversations. We'll have more. And certainly, whatever happens going forward with whoever manages that facility, I'm hearing the point about we need some kind of incentives based on either basically around trying to break even or getting down to a lower deficit, because I can tell you, having been at the city for 20 years, this facility, I don't believe is ever going to make money directly. And I don't believe that there's anybody that can run that down there and make money. I'll just tell you that. And, but I do think our deficits have been going the wrong way. I think Jeff knows that. And Jeff, you may want to stand up and say a few things about what we're going to be looking at. But I do hear loud and clear what all the commissioners are saying, and because I'm living it daily too, with Jeff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what Gerald's saying, and I echo that. And I understand all of your concern. It's been a tough year. My first year as a GM in the building has been a tough year. And, you know, we use the excuses of COVID. We use the excuses that you hear. And there's truth to those things. These, you know, whether it's a conference or a banquet or a concert, you know, we are still trying to get back. And you'll see over the next 6 months, I mean, the second half of 2023, we've got, 7, 8 shows, and we've still got a couple more to announce. Now, there's no guarantee that those shows are gonna be the big winner. I hope and pray every day. I lose sleep over it, thinking, will people buy tickets? And I don't wanna get on that begging thing, but people have to buy tickets to support the facility, to help us, help you, pay you guys and make the deficit happen, to get on the right side of the zero, as I say.
One of the things that we probably need to talk about and do in the future, Jeff, we'll talk more probably tomorrow or as we get a chance, is we need to figure out what the people will support.
Right,
Because when you do bring events, what he's saying is people need to buy tickets, because part of what we did that facility for was the thinking that we'll have facilities, and it's not just concerts. It's
No.
the Kiwanis Club meets down there, the Ambucks meet down there, the Rotary Club. It's that third place that I've heard, or whatever that terminology is for another place to do things.
Yeah.
There's been weddings down there, there's been other events. The culmination of all that, though, has been that it costs a significant amount of money to supplement, and it's not just, and it's with city funds, and it's also with the hotel funds that are city funds. So it is a difficult challenge. I hear it. I don't know quite yet what the way ahead is, but I understand that continuing to come and ask for more appropriations is not acceptable.
it's not, and it's my goal not to be back here. I want to be back here this time next year saying, yay, we made money.
Well,
And that's a celebration
we
that I want to have.
made money, but no illusions that we're going to, what he's talking
When
about.
I say make money, I look at that 548,000 that we're given as it's called a subsidy, but I see it as a benchmark for us to meet that number or better it.
Yeah.
Okay? And that's what I want to meet, is that $548,000 deficit or subsidy, or better that. I would love to get to zero or better. I think every general manager, every person, executive in OVG would love to have all of our buildings doing that for their clients. But as Gerald has said, I've been in the business for 30 years, and none of the buildings I've been in have ever been in that position. We've had a couple that have been in very prime locations that have done very well, and that's up in Idaho. We have one that's doing that, on the I-80, I think it is, and they're hitting it. But, most buildings struggle to get, they'll meet the deficit or the benchmark, but just barely sometimes, so.
Well, it's like you just said, hitting the 548. I would love for you to hit the 548,
Amen.
okay? But we're talking now 948.
Understood. Yes, sir.
That's a big difference. We're going the opposite direction.
Agreed.
We're going in the opposite direction. And like I said, this 400,000 is almost doubling the initial.
Agreed.
And the initial's hard enough for us to swallow to begin with. And now we're almost doubling it at the end of the year. It's,
Yes, sir. I totally agree.
In the dollars and cents measurement of what you bring in revenue and what you spend, that's what we're talking about
Yeah.
here. And so that's what we're talking about, needs to get back to, at one time, I thought maybe 300 was achievable. I don't know if that's achievable, but 500 or 548 is better than 948. One of the things I do want to re-echo that I think, I want to make sure is not lost here. There's more value to this center, even with 948,000, or there should be, from the impact of the people coming to the events. I know Rob Houston, I didn't specifically ask him to come tonight, should have, because part of his role in Visit Enid is to promote the city and get people here, not just in the center, but throughout the city. And so, but he's directly in your organization, so he's an asset. And so we're probably going to leverage that up a little bit more, because we spend $500,000 for Visit Enid. And we never talk about, quite frankly, how much they're bringing in or not bringing in, because that's not how we measure them. But
Right.
you are in the business of running event centers, so
That's correct. And I
I'm glad you're here
accept
tonight to
that.
hear directly.
Yeah, I accept that, and I'm going to do everything I can. I don't want to be standing back here doing this again next year, I promise that. So,
Anything else? Or go ahead, Joe. Did you-
No, I was just going to say, we want to make sure we try to answer the questions tonight, but probably we need to come back to the commission in the near future with
Yeah.
plan.
We need to, yeah, we need some updates. Agreed.
That's
Good.
all I had. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, sir.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
No one else has on that. Wanted to mention just a couple things that I think are positive on item number 6.11, where we are receiving the $4 million from the Congressional Direct Appropriations. This has not happened for Enid in a long time. That's four.
Well, I can't say never because I get corrected, but it hasn't happened in over 20 years.
Yeah.
Over 20 years.
$4 million, and that didn't happen by accident. That was because Congressman Lucas actually helped spearhead that through one of our local residents right here, Grace Enmeyer. I don't know if you know Grace or not, but she is his field rep, actually come to Gerald and said, hey, I think we're going to have some extra money. Could y'all use it? So if that hadn't have happened, we wouldn't have that $4 million right now. So you see her or the congressman out somewhere, mention that. We appreciate that. We can use it with all the projects that we've got going on. The other thing I wanted to mention is tonight on 6.14, we're going to accept the warranty deed for the Enid Sports, from the Enid Sports Association regarding the soccer complex. That's been a process for 3 years, I think it's been going on. I just think that it is a perfect example of our ability on our public-private partnerships that we do here in Enid. I think we're pretty unique to that. I had the opportunity last week to go to a mayor's conference. Some of them had never even heard of that before. You know, so it allows us to do bigger things than what we could probably do by ourselves. So I know we're gonna pass that in consent tonight, I believe, and, is it on consent? Doesn't matter. So it'll go through and we won't say anything about it, but it's a big deal. It's a big deal that we have that facility and that we'll be generating a lot of dollars out of that over many, many years. So those people that were involved in that, don't forget to thank them. That's a lot of work over, well, the actual construction was a little over 3 years, but that process starts up long before that. So I just wanted to call your attention to that. Those are big things that help our community, both of those items. So, any other comments anyone wants to make just in general on anything that's on the agenda tonight? Okay, I'll move on. We're very fortunate tonight to have a couple folks here, and I'll let them introduce themselves from OMAG. OMAG basically represents the city with our insurance. And they make sure that we stay in compliance with everything that we're doing. When we have questions or concerns, we can always give OMAG a call. They have people that can advise us, and we do that on a regular basis. So they have been good partners, and they're here tonight to talk about our best practice handbook that we have. So that being said, I'll turn it over.
Mayor,
To
thank
you,
you
Bill.
very much. I appreciate it. And it's good to be in Enid, and we really appreciate working with your manager, and Gerald's been a good friend with OMAG for a long time. And so my name is Bill Tackett. I work for OMAG. We're the Oklahoma Municipal Assurance Group. We're the ones that provide your insurance coverage. We're not a private company. We're a Title 74 Interlocal Cooperative Act agency. Title 74 is a very powerful tool. It says whatever Enid can lawfully do by itself, you can find a partner and do it with them. And so June 1st, 1977, Choctaw and the Village did just that. And from those two towns, we now have 500 cities and towns that belong to OMAG, and those are all within the borders of Oklahoma. Very short list of folks who don't belong to OMAG. So we're created by cities and towns, owned by cities and towns, including Enid, and governed by a 7-member board of trustees that are either elected or appointed officials that come from our membership. So we provide your work comp, liability, property, and your specialty coverage. And because we're not a private company, we try to return value through grants and scholarships. And we do things with police departments, public works departments, and we have scholarships for training for clerks and managers and mayors and all kinds of folks. And so we looked around and we decided that we have these kind of programs for everybody, but what do we have for the governing body? And so about 15 years ago or so, maybe longer, we partnered with David Weatherford, who is a private practice attorney in the Tulsa area. He's also a city attorney, has been in that type of practice since 1988. He's currently the city attorney for Manford, Mound, Sand Springs, and Arcoma, Oklahoma. David's a member of the Oklahoma Hall of Fame for city and town officials and a thought leader in our space. So we're very proud to partner with him, have for a long time. Don't really consider David a partner. He's part of the family and has been for a long time. We go around and we do this training all over the state. We've been here before. We've done this training in about 200 cities and towns in Oklahoma. The material that you see that we will use is David's content, David's work product. And we do this because, you know, there's not a lot of places to go to get training on how to be a board of directors of anything, let alone how to become a board of directors for this type of municipal corporation. OMAG cares about the competency of you good folks because we believe the best run cities and towns have fewer claims. Claims that you do have cost less money to resolve. About 8 years ago, we lowered your premiums 12%. They've remained at that level for a long time. What city staff wants to see when it's time to make a budget is they like to see stable, predictable expenses. They don't want to see things that go like this. We are raising our rates this year a little bit. It's the Biden economy after all. Go get a hamburger, gallon of milk, you'll see things are more expensive than they used to be. They will still be significantly less than they were 8 years ago. So we return value to you not only in the way that we adjust claims and provide legal assistance, but also in the grants and scholarships. We want to bring this training to you because Enid is not normally the kind of community we're talking to. We're talking to Medford or North Enid or Cherokee. That's really who OMAG is, but we also have Bartlesville, Ponca, McAllister, Muskogee, Enid, and Lawton, and Altus. So we do have various size and various sophistication. You all are extremely professionally run. You have a very professional staff, and you all know that. But how you all do your job, how you make policy, how you allocate resources, how you set goals and objectives helps make Enid successful. And if you're successful, you'll be part of the better run cities and towns. You guys are the board of directors of this municipal corporation. And we want you to know that we believe that everything is a process, not an event. And we think there's about 4 things that should be on your agenda. We'll maybe talk about that. As a board of directors, you have the same duties, resources, and jobs the Board of Devon or Walmart has. You have the duties of care, obedience, and loyalty, the resources of time, money, and people. And you have 3 jobs: set a direction for this organization, adopt policies that help Gerald and his staff take you to that future vision, that future state, and monitor results as you go. The duty of care means that when you guys take your seat at your meeting, you're prepared. You're ready to go. You've read your agenda packet, you know your material, you've asked your questions in advance, you're ready to discuss or vote, depending on what the agenda item is. If the first time you crack that agenda packet open is when your back of your lap hits the top of your chair, you have failed the duty of care. And so it's important that you have that information, you have those resources that you fully comprehend before you begin to discuss or deliberate or vote. And so obedience means we'll do whatever the laws of the land are until you change them, which is in your authority to do if it's a resolution or an ordinance. Loyalty means your hat, your ball cap says Enid on it. And so what's best for the entire organization is what you have to do. And sometimes politics comes to call. When I was at Okie State a long time ago, they said to me that the definition of politics is who gets what when. And when you all make a budget, when you allocate resources, you decide who gets what when. You don't have all the money in the world and you don't have enough resources to meet every need in a 12-month period. So you have to decide what your priorities are. You have to communicate that to staff as you give those directions. You have the resources of time, money, and people. How many times a month do you meet, Gerald? Once?
Twice.
Twice a month, so let's throw in 3 or 4 special meetings. So you meet 30 times or less a year. If your meetings are an hour long, and excluding my bloviating today, they shouldn't run hours and hours. But if, let's say your meetings run an hour, that's less than a full work week in an entire year period. That's 30 hours. The only time your board of directors is 2 things has happened. Your clerk has posted an agenda that meets the Open Meeting Act rules, and you have a quorum. When the mayor gavels you adjourned, you get promoted back to citizen. If you'll go and look and see what your individual powers and authorities are as a city council person, you'll find a blank piece of paper. You don't have any as an individual city council person. The power and authority you have is when you have a council, now you're a board of directors and now you can act. And when the mayor gavels you adjourned, you're promoted back to citizen. So your most precious resource is not money, which you think it is, and we've heard about money today, and it's always a concern. Your most precious resources is time. And your most important job is to say by 2033, Enid will go here and accomplish this. Because today you're either benefiting from or suffering from the decisions that got made 10, 15, 50 years ago. And people in 2033 will either be benefiting or suffering from the decisions you make. Everything is a process. You all, if you grew up like I did, you think everything's an event. Nothing's an event. Everything's a process. You plow, you plant, you water, you weed, you wait, and the good Lord gives the increase. Your tenure may end before you get to the event, but you're doing the important work to get to that future state. So continuity of leadership is extremely important. Simon Sinek has written a couple of 3 really best-selling books. You can go watch his YouTube video. He's got about 70 million hits on that thing. We like to use Simon because we can't find anybody to write a business book for municipal government. You all exist in this form of government. There's 5 forms of municipal government in Oklahoma. And this isn't even the most popular one. The most popular one by numbers is town, because most places are Medford and Enid, North Enid and Cherokee and so forth. So we use Simon Sinek to say, what is the framework for how you make decisions? Simon says most everybody knows what they do, some people know how they do it, but not a lot of organizations know why they exist. So why does your organization exist? If I'm in Tahlequah, it's not because that's where the tribe got relocated. If I'm in Durant, that's not because that's as far as people came up after the war. If I'm in Woodward, that's not because the horses got tired in the 5th land run and decided to stop at Woodward. Why does your organization exist? You have the same why as every other city and town in the state. You have 2 whats, you have a how and a why. Your 2 whats are your 2 missions. You have 2 missions. And you're not going to hear anything new from me today. It's all old and pedestrian. You have the same 2 missions, the same 2 whats that people clumped up with thousands of years ago. They did it for 2 reasons: be safe and trade with other people. Your 2 whats are increase public safety and facilitate commerce. We run off sales tax, and you have to have a robust economic development program. But what is your why? It should drive every decision you make. And I suggest your why is this: you want to create the kind of community that attracts quality individuals who want to live and work and raise their families here. That's your why, and every decision you make should be pulling the rope towards that future state. You want to create the kind of community that attracts quality individuals who live and work and raise their families here. David Weatherford has done this training a lot of times. I'm fortunate to go around the state with him. He has a quiz that you're going to take. You have the world's best pen sitting in your coffee mug in front of you. Congratulations. You don't often get the world's best anything, and you'll use that to take the test. David, it's your turn.
Good. Thanks for having us. Good to be back in Enid. And I want to mention first your handbook. I commend you on getting a handbook finished and approved. It's an important step in having a stable government over a long period of time, and I think it's a good thing that you put a lot of time and effort into setting a framework for how this board should operate. And I hope you refer to it and use it and grow it over time, because it will help you. When we started this process 15 years ago, I think there were maybe 1 or 2 cities in Oklahoma in which the governing body had a handbook. And it's interesting how that's changed. Bill mentioned we're gonna ask you to do some self-evaluation, because I think it's a part of understanding what our job is. So a part of that is to take a test that we call the stability test, and one of our goals in government should be to build a stable government over time. The public expects you to be competent and good at what you do, and they expect you to do that over a long period of time, and we want to help you evaluate how you do that so you can work to improve, not for the purpose of judging anyone, but for the purpose of evaluating so we can work toward getting better. And that's the idea in which this test was created. It's been taken by thousands of elected officials just like you around the state. As Bill mentioned, we've been to several hundred cities, most of them smaller than Enid, but a few of them larger than Enid. And I think the issues are very similar because your jobs are very similar to the decision makers in other cities. So let's go through a test. The purpose of the test or the evaluation was to really identify those areas of city government that are important, that are within your degree of control, that you can work to improve over time. So, skip ahead a few. First question, and you're going to give a score between 0 and 10 and evaluate the financial standing of the city. All of you have a scorecard. It should look like that as stability test. Someplace between 1 and 10, how financially stable is the city of Enid? A 1 would be a city that's concerned about making payroll, and we see that score. A 10 would be a city that has a financial reserve policy, that is a policy set by the governing board, and you fully fund that reserve policy, and it is at least 20% of your general fund. And by policy, you have said, we're going to establish that amount of reserve and we're going to fully fund it. That number comes from the financial experts for cities, who recommends that cities maintain a robust reserve. Some cities have charter requirements, some have no requirements. If you don't have one, and if you don't know, that's fine. Some of you understand are fairly new to your job. This question is first on the test because the finances of the city are one of your most important roles as an elected official, to ensure that over time your city is financially stable. We have seen within the last year a city authorized for their public trust the filing of bankruptcy. And we have seen cities on the verge of being bankrupt. And as Bill mentioned, you don't want to burden future generations with bad decisions. You want to make good, sound financial decisions. And you have great staff who can help you do that. And over time, you need to put thought into how you do that. So for today, how are you doing financially? Some of you may not know, I've had a council member in a city, good-sized city, raise their hand and say, I have no idea. I've only been on council 15 years, and I've never once received a financial report for my city. There is no state requirement that you be provided a level of information concerning the finances. You're fortunate because you have a city manager who has a financial background. I'm sure you get financial information. Some cities don't. Okay? Question number 2 is, how do you evaluate the governing body? High score is we have good elected officials. When we have vacancies and open seats, we have good qualified people who want to serve. It's considered an honor to serve on our board because we represent our citizens well. We're professional, and we set high standards for how we do business, including having a handbook. A low score is you look around and say, I wish we could throw them all out and start over. And we've been in cities within the last year in which every member wrote down a 1 because that's what they thought about their cohorts, including the way they were doing business. And we ask you to do this self-evaluation because that is entirely within your control to make it better. And it's within only your control to make it better. Question number 3 is evaluate your meetings. Hopefully, we attract and retain good public servants, and a part of doing that is having good, productive meetings. And A high score is a city that has meetings that you enjoy attending. You hope you never miss one. And you feel like you're accomplishing the business of the city. A low score is that city in which the meetings are miserable and you hope you never go to another one. And that's not a good way to live, is it?
No, sir.
Our goal should be to have good meetings that are productive, that attract good people, and that give the public confidence in what we're doing. And that takes the work of all of you to be on the same page and to work well together and accomplish the business of the city. Question number 4, how's the workforce of the city? As a board of directors of this municipal corporation, you should want it to be a great place to work. I've had the privilege of working in Sand Springs for the last 20 years, and there was a time up until a few retirements, we had 3 employees who'd been with the city for 50 years. It's considered a good place to work, and as a board of directors, that should be your goal. A high score is we attract and retain good employees, and it's an honor to work for the city because we as a board of directors want to make it that way. A low score is that city that has just constant turnover in the workforce, has a hard time retaining or attracting any employees. So evaluate how you're doing in managing the workforce, knowing that you have a city manager that is in charge of the employees, but is it a good place to work, and what can you do as a board of directors to make it a better place to work? Question number 5 is the hardest one on the test. I can guarantee you your score will probably be the lowest because statewide it's the lowest. What's the image of the city of Enid as an entity, as a government? We know statewide we're living in an era in which there's a lot of anti-government belief. It is hard for a city to have a good public image. But a high score should be a city in which there's a lot of public confidence in you as a governmental body to take care of the business of the city. How do we get to a high level of public confidence in what we do? And I really think that's by meeting what the public expects, which is professionalism, honesty, hard work, all of those traits that we know that work in the private sector, work in city government. And it's your job to help improve that. A low public image is usually the city in which there's no confidence in the governing body, no confidence in the government as an entity. So give a score on how you're doing. Question number 6 is how do we deal with a crisis? I figured out in the last few days that most everyone west of I-35 doesn't realize that the Tulsa area has been in a crisis the last few days. We had, as of yesterday, 200,000 people without power in the Tulsa area as a result of the windstorm, and it seems like that message didn't get out much beyond Tulsa. Government exists to deal with crisis, and the public expects the government to respond when those events occur. So a high score is you're well prepared. You spend time and effort knowing how to respond to disasters, tornadoes, floods, whatever it may be, because the public expects us to be ready for those events. Low score is we have no idea what we would do if that would happen. As a board of directors, it's part of your job to be prepared and to know that the city is prepared for those events, whether that's budgeting resources to be ready for it, knowing that your police and fire departments are well-staffed and well-prepared and have good equipment, and all of those things that go into being ready for those events when they occur. Question number 7 is economic development. 30 years ago, this would not have been a part of the test because it wasn't considered a governmental role. Cities have become much more competitive in sales tax dollars, much more dependent on retail growth and development. So the question is, how active is your city in economic development projects? A high score is you're active, you're involved, and you're making a difference and you play an active role in moving the economic growth of the city forward. A low score is that city who has decided not to participate. And we have some who do not participate in economic development activities, and you as a board of directors get to decide your level of involvement. Okay? Number 8, planning and goal setting. How well do we as an organization map out where we want to go? It is in part having a comprehensive plan. It is in part dealing with those things that come up before a planning commission and annual reports and budgets and all of those things that go into mapping out the future. But how well do we do that as an organization? Do we know what we want Enid to be in 10 years or 20 years? It is an interesting concept, but I would challenge you to recognize that you are the think tank for the city. You are the ones who are going to dictate that. And while we sometimes talk about things that are not your business as elected officials, you're promoted back to a citizen most of the time, a very important part of what your job is to decide what you want Enid to be someday, because there's no one else who has the authority to do that. The public has entrusted you to do that. And it is a part of your job to plan well for the future and decide what your city's going to be. And I would encourage you to spend some time on it. A high score is those cities that spend time working toward that goal. Low score is those who spend so much time on routine administrative day-to-day operations, they never get around to it. It really is a part of your job. Number 9 is stability of administration. How stable is the management? That's not just the city manager's position, it's the upper management of the city. Your goal as a board of directors should be that you have stable management. We know from the private sector that stable management results in greater success over time. We've been in cities that have been through multiple changes in leadership on a regular basis, and we know what the result is when that occurs. So your goal should be to have stable management over time. So you're being asked to evaluate, have we been stable? And if not, why not? And if yes, how do we sustain it? How do we continue that? Because we know stability in management will lead to greater results. Okay? And question number 10 is, how well do we communicate as an organization? Are we getting the information we need to make decisions? And if not, we need to work on how we can do that better. Okay? So how well do we get the information we need to make the decisions that come before us? We'll gather those. We'll get a composite score back to you. Enid has consistently scored well when you've done this evaluation in the past, and I suspect you will again. The test is not designed to cause judgment. It is designed to help you identify areas in which you can get better, because we think we can get better. And I'll tell you how we use this test in Sand Springs. We use it as a planning tool. We have 4 quarterly work sessions a year for the elected officials, and we usually pick one of these topics to discuss. How do we get better at that topic? How do we improve the public image of our city? How do we work toward getting better at one of these topics and try to do that on a regular basis over time to try to improve? I would encourage you that some cities are very successful and others aren't. And you're going to get to control that. Are any of you new to the council or newest within last year? 1?
2 months.
2 months.
Yeah.
What do you think so far?
Lots to learn.
Enjoying it?
So far, yes.
Good. It should be an enjoyable experience. That should be one of your goals. Mayor, how have you enjoyed it?
I like it. I've enjoyed it. It's a lot of work. I've been a commissioner before. I told Gerald I've seen him more in the last month than I did during 2 years prior whenever I was Ward 6 commissioner. But it's all good, and I enjoy it.
What can the other board members do to make your job as mayor easier? Anything that just stands out?
You know, David, I think we're pretty fortunate. I think we have a pretty congenial bunch of commissioners. While we may see some things differently or raise a lot of questions or concerns, I've noticed by our vote pattern that I think we get along, or we at least see the end result pretty well. So right now, of course, it's early on, but I have a good relationship with every single person up here. We talk on the phone quite a bit, all of us do, or I do with them. And I I don't know that I could give you something that they could do better. Probably if anybody, I need to do better on some things, so.
Well, good. One of the most insightful things I ever heard from a longtime mayor. I asked him once why his city was so stable and why their commission and board worked so well together over a long period of time. How did they get to that point? And he had a great answer, which I think is good advice for all of you. He said when he first got elected, he was called into a meeting with the mayor, and the mayor said, I need you to do one thing as an elected official, and that is to show respect for the vote of the other board members. Because if you will do that, you will be successful. The minute you don't, your vote will become meaningless. And what a simple lesson that if you can show respect for everyone else's vote, even when they disagree, because we have 9 of you because you are going to disagree at times. But when you disagree, if you can have respect for the vote of those who voted against you, it will go a long ways to building stability over time and making your job hopefully a whole lot easier. A second mayor, when I asked him what is the most successful thing he's done as mayor, and he's in a city that has had tremendous economic growth, lots of development, lots of improvements of public facilities and staffing, and every way you could measure success, their city would look like a success. And he said, it's none of those. We built a team and found a way to work well together. That was his key to being successful. And if the group of you can find a way, even when you disagree with each other, to work well together, you can be very successful. And I think that's how we should define our success as a city, finding a way to work well together so that we can accomplish the business of the city. Bill, I don't know if you have more you want to cover. Statewide average on scores, you guys have exceeded that usually. We see it's a 70s, the lowest score we've seen in the last year, I believe is a 12 when we've given this test, which is pretty amazing that a city could evaluate themselves that low, but they did. They can fix it, we can't. We don't take the test. We encourage you to work to get better at what you do. Identify your goals and work to accomplish those. So, any questions for any of you? Others have served longer, I assume, than just the new guy. Gerald, any questions of us?
No, I appreciate you coming up today and sharing and talking about the best practices from your perspective of seeing so many cities.
And I think one advantage you should have, as you make important decisions about how you operate, incorporate those into your handbook. Entrench them in that culture of what you want the future to be like for your governing body. If 6 months from now you run across something and you say, boy, we should always do it this way, find a way when you update your handbook next year to find a way to put that in it so that it becomes a part of the culture of how you do business. And I think it will help those future generations.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with your handbook. I would say this is probably one of the best handbooks we've seen. David's very modest. When we started this, I think there was maybe 3 municipalities that had a governing body handbook, not an employee handbook. All 3 of those municipalities happen to have the same city attorney, so there's a little consistency there. You know what this looks like to me? This looks like something I might actually read because it's not this thick with tiny font. You guys did a great job with this. Use this handbook. You know, if you go to work at any place that's going to be big enough to matter, you're going to get two important documents. You're going to get a job description that tells you how to win at your job. You're going to get a handbook that tells you about the culture and the benefits and the aspirations of the organization. And so really, it's an excellent orientation book. It's a way to confirm and continue the culture of winning that you have here. All too often we see not great orientation for new people. And so a handbook's an important component of that. Probably maybe 60 or so cities and towns now have a handbook for governing officials. That looks like one that can be user-friendly and get used. Gerald, thank you for having us out again. If we could ever do anything for you all, we're happy to do it. Aubrey will get a composite score back, and we'll also have some of your historical scores. You know, the idea behind taking the stability test is these 10 key areas of municipal operations. Are we getting better, staying the same, or getting worse? Because you need to measure how your performance is going. So Mayor, we appreciate you all. Thank you for your service to this great community. Gerald, thank you for having us out, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. We appreciate that. And Aubrey also, I'm sorry when I say guys. Thank you all for coming up. We appreciate it. Safe travels back. And we'll move on. 3.2, update on current engineering projects.
Mayor, Commissioners, thank you for having me today. I got a lot of slides. We got a lot done this year, and I'm kind of proud of that, proud of what we got accomplished. So as I'm going through here, if I skip over something you guys want me to elaborate on a little bit more, just holler at me, and I can back up and we can talk about it. In FY23, we had a total budget of a little over $15.5 million, which included us with 42 projects that we were looking forward to achieving. And you know, obviously the purpose of those are improvements to real property and major maintenance projects. There's a breakdown of each individual fund that was done. That equals that 15.5 million. So just to get right into it, to start, fire station, first project to go over is a fire station roof replacement, fire station 1 roof replacement. Design was done by Roy Easley and his crew. Award was $430,000. Construction is about 99% complete. I think we lack a ladder, isn't it? Something simple like that. So for a fire station, I think it's kind of a comical, but that's all that's lacked is a single ladder. Once that's done, the project will be moving right along. As you can see in the picture here on the left, this is, you can see the kind of what it was before, and in the background back there, that's what the new roof looks like. In the street and alley fund, we had 1.4 million total for the entire reconstruction and repair part, and then 50,000 for the sidewalk partnership program. First project that we worked on was North 5th Street between Randolph and Broadway. Design was done in-house. It was award of $194,000 to Rick Lorenz. Construction got underway 2 weeks ago or so. They're about 30% complete. Durango Road, La Mesa to Split Rail. Design was started in-house. As we began diving into the project, we realized that it was going to be more economical for our Public Works Department to overlay with asphalt than it would be for us to do a complete reconstruction of the project. A couple factors that kind of led into that. The two roads going to the south down there are cul-de-sacs. Then obviously it's a dead end going off to the west. So there was no easy way to reconstruct it completely without blockading off, I think, 30 homes or something like that. And so that's a tough struggle for us to do. Public Works was glad to take on the project, and they've started it. I think they're nearly complete. Second project that we worked on was 1900 to 2000 block of West Main Street, which is Hayes to Johnson. Design was done in-house. That's all that we accomplished. That was our goal this year, to get the design complete. Water line will be constructed next year, and the roadway will either possibly maybe done next year depending on budgets, and it's either be next year or the following year. Birch Avenue, I spoke towards this one before. After doing some research and looking to the possibilities of this project as well, we determined it would be more economical for the Public Works to do an asphalt overlay and instead of doing a complete reconstruction. So that was moved over to them. This is for this This was the $1 million that the Public Works Department had for the concrete point repair program. The initial contract was $827,000, and then that was through Luckenbill Development, excuse me, and then we did additional $279,000 of other small projects that were not a part of the primary contract. A total of 28 locations throughout the city. For our sidewalk partnership program, which is residential and commercial projects, we awarded a total of $19,000 to J&B to relocate, to do sidewalk reconstructions at 5 locations. Gerald wanted me to speak to a little bit towards this, just kind of help promote it a little bit. We had 11 applications for this, and to speak towards that a little bit, this program is a 50-50 split with the residents or the commercial property owner. But through citywide, we had 11 applications, and only when it boiled down to it, 5 of those applications were willing to put up their 50%. And to speak a little further towards that, one of the locations was, or sorry, 3 of those locations was owned by a single individual. So if you boil it all the way down, 3 people took advantage of the partnership program this year.
That 19,000 though, that was our contribution to it.
Yes, sir.
Is that- Okay.
Yes.
And Jason, we have, what, 50,000 in the budget for that program total?
Total, yes.
Okay, so 30,000 left over
Yeah.
that individuals could take advantage of. Is there a deadline date, or can they, at any time?
Well, kind of where we're at in the time of the year, well, I mean, it'll roll over the next year. We have the same amount next year. Typically, what we like to do, just so that we don't run out of time, we say from July to December, we're open for applications, but when we don't get very many, we'll come on in. We'll talk to you about it for sure. Property improvement, expansion acquisition fund, $790,000 over the soccer complex, traffic signals, and building 400 roof replacement. Out at the soccer complex, the flat work was awarded this year for $520,000 to North End Construction. They're somewhere around 60% complete. For the parking, lighting was awarded to Byram Electric, the amount of $85,000, and they're about 50% complete. I think they're a little further along that now. I got a little bit of an update, and they're getting ready to stand up poles, so they're moving right along. Traffic signal network. This project is administrated by Michael Williams and his team over in Public Works. This project was awarded for $101,000 to Chisholm Broadband, and what this one is accomplishing is, Raleigh, I knew I'd forget the number, 34 signals to be able to talk back to the service center, basically have control over what's happening at the intersections with this connection. Service center roof replacements. The project was initially slated for a single roof, but the guys over there at Public Works were able to find some good dollars and good cents on it, and actually get 3 roofs replaced over there: the Building 400 roof, the auction building, and the Building 1000. And construction is complete on those 3 buildings. Property repairs maintenance fund, $320,000, which this is mostly the transition plan money, and then the Meadow Lake, some stuff out at the Meadow Lake Golf Course. The majority of this year's ADA money is going towards 10th Street sidewalks, which that's going to be the reconstruction of the 10th Street, included alongside 10th Street reconstruction between Garriott and Chestnut. And then the other part of the ADA money went to the Champlin Pool, parking and front entrance reconstruction. Design was done in-house, and the award went to J&B Concrete for right around $90,000. Construction is complete. I wish I had a better picture of it because it's very nice work. They did a good job. And then out the golf course, they're needing a building demoed. And so we worked with the golf course and getting that lined up. That'll be taken down in the next couple of months by Jackson's Demolition. The Reconstruction and Overlays Fund had a budget of $3 million for Cleveland Street widening, and then the Prairie View sidewalk was design was also part of that, $50,000. Excuse me. Cleveland Street, we are setting on go, waiting for October. We've accomplished a lot this year on that project. We completed right away, completed utility relocation. I have design complete by Poe and Associates. That's actually a little bit what we're waiting on, or ODOT's waiting on. Some of the final submittals from them. You guys have approved the agreement with ODOT for $4.7 million, and ODOT is I talked to them earlier this week. It'll be let in October, and so you all will be seeing basically the check for the 4.7 coming through over the next meeting or two. So,
Can I ask a question right here? When we did Willow and we were completely done with the work, we were still waiting on the railroad to show up, just basically at their mercy. On this Cleveland project, did we rework that railway when we did everything south? Or,
no, sir.
so we're gonna have to deal with that again?
Yes, sir. Yep. Yes, the railroad railroad portion is part of this project as well. The expansions that are required at that intersection because of the widths and the angles and all that stuff is significant. And there's really there isn't a whole lot of area in there to do any kind of shoe flies or anything like that to where we could get around that. So contractor, has some control over when some of those things are going to happen, but we've insisted, Morale and I, throughout the design process that this needs to be basically only a 2 shutdown project. We have that crossing at the railroad, and then we have a culvert crossing up north, kind of behind Jumbo's in that area, and that's the only time that when they're working those 2 sections that we want the road completely shut. So
we'll just divert it to one side and.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Yes, sir. I'm excited for that project because I've been here 5 years and I feel like I've worked on it ever since I walked in the door. So I'm excited for that one to be coming to life. Prairie View sidewalk. We actually deferred this project because we found some grant funding. I say we, our grant, Stephen, and yeah, Stephen found us a very nice chunk of money for it, 1.2 million. And so we've selected the firm, or we went through the process with ODOT. We've selected a firm that's gonna do the design work, and we have the pre-design meeting upcoming for that soon. So.
On that Prairie View sidewalk, are we gonna need to expand the school crossing zone for that whole neighborhood? Certainly if we have a lot of children walking down that,
That's kind of the primary goal of that project, is to get the sidewalks off of the edge of the road and get them back up towards there. Is that kind of what you're meaning?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, are we gonna, pretty much at the end of that neighborhood is where your first school zone is? The school zone sign, I think, or it might be around
You talking about in this area?
Mount Vernon, yeah. Are we gonna take that back to that road on the right? I think it's Liberty.
I'll have to look into that once that project gets kind of to design and see if that's something that's required. I honestly can't tell you that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it really hasn't been determined yet.
Yeah.
Okay.
But we'll certainly look into it.
That's a
now that it's-
very good concern. Parks budget, we had $580,000 for Kellett Park lighting, Government Springs tennis court, some flashing lights at the trail crossing, and some new sunshades at Meadow Lake North and Crossland Park. I wanted to get the picture of former Mayor Pinkinen out there at the ballpark, but I couldn't figure out how to get the video on here for you. But y'all saw the video of the lights in action out of Kellett Park. That project was $350,000, and it was done by Musco Sports Lighting, and the local contractor was KC Lighting. Construction is complete on that. Government Springs Tennis Court resurfacing and nets. The design for this project was done in-house. And there's the after picture. They've still got a few more little items to take care of out on the courts before they're completely completed with the project. The award was for $94,000 through Hellas Construction. We installed some flashing lights over at the trail crossing along Roop Avenue. That's between Oakwood and Cleveland, right, Marley? Okay, thank you. Total cost, well, design was in-house. Total cost was $6,800 through Action Safety, and construction is complete on that one. Sunshades, Corey Buller with the Parks Department completed this project. $110,000 for a handful of shades over the structures at the softball and t-ball fields and some of the other structures. Reconstruction and overlays, $1.2 million for the 10th Street project. This project is located between Garriott and Chestnut. We've talked about it several times. The award was for 1.6 to J&B Concrete for half of the construction this year, just to begin this year. And then we will kind of do a staggered construction along this project. So this year we awarded half of the work for the roadway. Next year we're going to award the water line reconstruction, which is actually Randolph to Chestnut. And then in FY25 we'll award the rest of the roadway construction. Sanitary sewer projects, $1.4 million. Those projects included the I&I, which we do every single year, 54th lift station upgrade, phase 2, and root control, and then the backup power to 5 lift stations. Our sanitary, this is when we refer to the I&I, that's our sanitary point repair program. When I was sitting down earlier, I wanted to look up the number, and I forgot to look up the number. But I think there are probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50 point repairs completed this year, and they've got 90% of the funding completed. 54th lift station. This is a large project for a excuse me, a large project for a large sanitary lift station. First phase of it was $440,000 through OR Construction. This was primarily focused on upgrading the existing tanks, relining, installing new stainless steel piping, and construction began about a month ago approximately, and they're at 5% complete. Sanitary root control through Duke's Root Control. This is a project where the Duke's goes out and puts a chemical within the sewer lines to take care of the roots to prevent them from clogging up the sanitary sewer lines. The project award was for $77,000, and they're about 95% complete this year.
Hey, Jason?
Yes, sir.
We are, you're doing a wonderful update, and we probably need some more of that update, but we do need to talk about at least one more item here.
Okay.
And Carol, I think that we're constrained because the regular meeting starts at 6:30. Is that right? Or could we just finish this, and if the meeting starts at 6:40? Otherwise, I'm probably would like to bring back the rest of this at the next study session. And
A few minutes late is not a problem.
okay.
A few minutes late is not a problem.
Jason?
We go over a little bit
Is it going to be a few
late.
more minutes, or is it going to be another 20? Because I know the commissioners are going to have plenty of questions.
35.
35?
At 57.
57,
Halfway through.
halfway through.
I think we need to bring you back
yeah.
next time.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I know the commissioners will have questions, and maybe what we could do is just stop right now and try to answer their questions. They have the slides, they've seen all the great things the city has done, and, Mayor, does anybody have questions about what we've talked about so far?
Yeah, does anyone have any questions about what we've talked about, or what Jason showed us?
Just on, from Chestnut to Garrett on 10th Street, is that gonna be completely concrete or a mixture of concrete and asphalt? Or is that totally concrete?
Total concrete.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We're start where, it's kind
That's
of it's a arterial program, it's, we got to get that concrete base there. And then so 50 years from now, when I guess.
Yeah. Most of us.
Yeah, my
won't know
son
nothing
or
about it.
grandson is
Yeah.
up here, they can overlay the project.
Okay, that's great.
Any other questions? Good job. That's a lot of projects. That's a lot of projects the city's managed to do.
Thank you,
So
sir.
thank y'all. I'm going to move the presentation from, that Garver was going to do next. I'm going to move that to the next meeting. And I'm going to move on to 3.3. Carol, I think you're going to discuss the new commercial marijuana grow facility ordinance.
I think that Alex Hamilton wants to do it, but I'm here for any questions.
Thank you, Carol. Honorable Mayor and Commissioners, just a very brief oversight on a draft ordinance that is going to be presented to you at your meeting of July 6th. This ordinance was presented as a draft. This is a study session, so it's just I'm just here to cover it in summary form. But it was presented to our Metropolitan Area Planning Commission this last Tuesday on the 20th. We had some questions, a little bit of feedback on the 6th. I'll fully document what that was. But they did recommend unanimously that you consider adopting this ordinance on the 6th. Basically, the long and short of this is that it defines commercial medical marijuana facility, and as it stands now is proposing to eliminate that as a use permitted by right in the agriculture and commercial zones, and allow it by right in the industrial zones only. It also introduces an important concept that these, going forward, after this is adopted and goes into effect, that any new such facilities be within fully enclosed buildings and be designated as an F or a factory-type occupancy. Really what this means is it's a higher standard for this type of use, comes with higher standards for mechanical ventilation, fire suppression, overall building fire life safety measures. Staff does believe that it's a fair proposed regulation and that it does allow for this, but on an industrial scale in the appropriate zones, which would be the industrial zones. Very briefly, the MAPC had some questions and some feedback. As I said, I'll more formally give you that feedback on the 6th, but it pretty much centered around there were questions about individual cultivation, which is not applicable in this case, and that's regulated by state law. There were questions about application of the new restrictions, when they would go into effect, how that would affect any projects that are either currently fully licensed or in the pipeline, as I like to say. And then also there were some discussions about allowing these uses as subject to use by review, which is something that the MAPC has authority to do. That serves as an additional level of review for these proposed uses. And then just questions about allowing them in the agriculture zone and whether that is really an appropriate use of agricultural land. So staff, when we present on the 6th, does recommend that the ordinance will be considered by you as presented, and you have a copy of that, I believe, in front of you to consider. So at this point, that summarizes what we're looking to do here. We think that it's reasonable, and it will serve to allow the uses to continue, but really kind of bring in some controls that will allow for some meaningful regulation. be more than happy to answer any questions should you have it at this point in time.
I have a question.
Sure.
Does this give you any possible way of cleaning up situations that we have within our city limits that we're not happy with?
It's a good question, Commissioner. It really depends on the status of their license and whether they're in full compliance with both the local regulations, because we do have to issue a certificate of occupancy for these. The state really has the control, but we do have to issue certificates of occupancy, and I believe, Scott, they're subject to, is it an annual inspection? It's an annual inspection by us. So if we find them to be out of compliance, the answer would be yes, we can ask for improvements to bring them back into compliance.
If they've lost their license, but then they go back and they reapply, what would be the process now?
The process, as I understand it, and Scott can help me on this if necessary, would be they have to be in full compliance with the state requirements, and then they've got to pass the inspections that our office does or provides for the certificate of occupancy. And that's a pretty high standard. And really what this does is it's looking to the future. It's looking to a limited degree, it can clean up what we have, but that's really a separate track. It's more code enforcement within the framework of their license, and are they in good standing with their current license. But going forward, this is a higher standard for anybody wanting to operate one of these businesses going forward, because they'll be subject to being in an F occupancy type building. So I hope that does answer your question partially. It's not, I can't promise that it's going to clean up everything. There are mechanisms to address those things that are separate and apart from this ordinance, but this does give us more control.
This ordinance really prevents future instances
Exactly.
of what you're talking about, Commissioner. We are going to, and are looking at other ways to clean up the issue that I think you're referring to.
Right.
And in fairness to that person out there, they have made some efforts to clean that up. I think the fundamental problem is that they're not in operation, and if we'd had something like this in place before, at least it would have probably looked better. So I don't think this is going to be the panacea that solves that problem, but we are acutely aware of that issue and working often on that problem.
Well, we've been talking about it for how many years? A couple of years, and it doesn't seem to get any better. It just looks worse.
If the use is completely, once the ordinance passes and the 30 days passes so that it is operational, if the use is dormant for 6 months, then it goes away.
And that would be along the lines of our non-conforming rules, that there's a certain window to reestablish, and if you don't, as Carol said, it's gone, and it's subject to the new rules should you adopt them once they go into effect.
No, you go ahead.
I've read this, but I can't remember, does it address appearance? The way, a building or looks, or how it's kept?
Commissioner, that's a good question. I do have a handout, a sample of what, you could give this to Summer, she could hand it out, of what an F occupancy might typically look like. It's really, it does kind of address the appearance, but it's not a design standard for a building, other than to say that you got to comply with building and fire codes, and on the back, there's pictures of what these buildings would typically look like. I'm sure we've all seen them. I believe there's one off I-35 as you go into Oklahoma City. They can be metal buildings, but typically they're characterized by heavy-duty mechanical ventilation, lots of air conditioner and compressors. But it's important to say there could be varying styles of building, but I don't believe you could do something like a plastic hoop house or anything such as that, because that certainly doesn't meet the standard set forth in the F occupancy.
Because I feel like, what would have addressed the issue that we're dealing with now is in this ordinance, before it comes back to us, that we address the appearance and the maintenance of a structure like this, so we don't have to deal with anything like this moving forward. Even if it's in an industrial area, it doesn't matter.
It takes care of it.
Okay.
The factory group building or occupancy means that the plants or the processing is going to take place inside a building. And they will have, I mean, and the building is not going to be a normal barn. It's going to have, particularly if it's large, it will have to have all sorts of, there's sprinkling, and it's more of a factory. It is less than, something to grow carrots in.
And to build off that, it could still take on a different number of appearances. It could be a metal building, it could be a concrete building, it could be a tilt-up building. But the bottom line is it's a building with a permanent foundation and all the systems that are necessary to go into that. So my experience has been that somebody comes in, they're subject to an F occupancy, they're going to be spending a fair amount of money to get those systems in place and be code compliant. And that's really what we want to achieve.
Okay, thank you.
But in being an industrial, it's, we're not, I don't believe we're concerned about having flowers and things like that. It's more making sure that we have the infrastructure in place so that it's safe, so that the fire department can come up and drive on a hard surface road to get to the place, that there's adequate water, electricity, all those ventilation and stuff. So it is industrial. So it's not going to look like the Coke plant or something, but that's why we're putting it there, is because the determination is that it's more industrial than farm-like.
Thank you.
If you have no other questions of me, this concludes the presentation, and we will see you on the 6th with the ordinance.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I think,
Got about a 1 minute if you want to watch.
is it just 1 minute?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tim, would you come on up and let's show that video of the new equipment we have and talk about that? And the video's about a minute, I think, and, yeah, David, good to see you.
And I'll be very quick. I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to give a little bit of cheerleading for some of the things that you, as a commission, have approved. This is one of our really big toys that we got recently, our big grinder. Tim is going to show we're going to have our video, but we just want to have a little hoo-ha right now, just saying hooray that we've got some of these great things out there. I do want to urge or ask or request that if you have the time, please come out to our landfill and some of our facilities. Tim and Tatum, our foreman, will get you out on these pieces of equipment, let you play with them, and I think you'll have a very good appreciation for how some of the things work out there.
Well, the degree that we let you play with them is probably, that sounds really good. And it might be good to let me know as well, so we can schedule that in an orderly fashion.
Yes,
But I
yes.
appreciate your enthusiasm,
Yes.
David.
Sorry.
It's good to have you back. I know you've
Thank
been
you.
on a trip.
Yeah, got caught by weather and almost didn't make it back.
If you would, you go ahead and start the video. So that's just a video of us operating it. That was the first day we started with it. There's a lot of key features that make it bigger and better. I think it has about a 15 to 20% more capacity as far as grinding goes. It's got about 150 more horsepower than our older grinder, and There's a couple other things that they changed on it that make it better, but I think the biggest key is it's on tracks. It's completely remote controlled, which gives us a number of benefits for the operator. The old one, we had to move by a truck, so when we had to get out of the machine, turn it off, move it. If we had to adjust the machine, we had to get out of the track hoe, get out, adjust it, turn it back on, get back in it. This one, it's completely remote control. We can basically do everything except turn it on. So all we do is turn it on, get in the track hoe, and everything's controlled with the remote. Gives us a lot of options.
One man can operate.
One man. It's a true one-man setup with the track hoe. So what you don't see in that one, I don't know if you guys been around it very much, but those scoops that are grabbing, those are about the size of a car that are going in at one time. We have the ability to put bigger stumps, bigger trees in, and with the remote, you have ability to actually adjust it, control it. You can flip it over, run it back in, back it up, flip it over, run it back in. Before, if the stump got stuck in it, we were pulling it out, going to get another piece of machine, trying to get it out of there. So it gives us a lot more efficiency as far as, like you were saying, a one-man thing. He sits in it, he controls it. When he needs to move, he goes over to the pile, moves it. It's not another piece of machine coming over and pushing stuff to him. So it gives us a lot of fun stuff to make us more productive.
What are you doing with that? Are you using it as cover, or are you using it, putting it in the?
So last year, we did get a permit from DEQ. We do use cover with it. It gave us the ability to where we're not just covering with dirt. We can mix 50-50 now, so we actually get to save a lot of dirt, which is very important to us. That's our limiting factor at the landfill, is dirt. So we get to save half the dirt that we used for cover. And we also, we've done various things. If people have called, we've helped them out. I know we've given some to the public as far as if they
Is it
wanted to
high
use
enough?
it, we'll give it away.
Is the quality generally high enough to use in a domestic setting?
So, yes and no. We have two sizes of screens, and typically at your house, it's generally a smaller than what we typically produce. But what we do, we're gonna get online. Right now, we're using all of our chips because all the rain we've had to use it at the landfill. When everything gets leveled out and slows back down, once we get our piles set up, we'll switch screens to the smaller screens, and we'll run the product back through, make it a smaller material, take it down to a 3-inch, and it's typically what you see at your house, give or take. Some stores it's like 2, but typically your 3 inches is what you use at a house. So we will be able to produce that. We don't have any of the dyes or anything, so it's not as pretty, and we do have a mix of wood. So just a couple things to consider, but I know Church in Southern Heights, last year we took him, Forgotten Ministries, got with Jeremiah, we took him, I think, 12 truckloads. He requested it for his gardens, so that's something we did. So yeah, we're definitely open. If somebody needs it in the community, it's there.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Great video. Glad you guys have that piece of equipment. We're going to adjourn, and we'll come back at 6:35. 6:35. They'll give us a 10-minute break. We're adjourned.
Hey, Gerald? Yeah. I want to go out there and play on it. I know how to run it.
That's why I didn't want to go out there because we'd all be up on it.